Like, I wonder if, like, cosmically, there's the
Yeah.
doo-doo-doo. This
Yeah.
number is no longer in service. So, Chris who? After how long?
I think you find him under apostate.
Yeah.
Hey there. If you've joined the podcast today, my name is Chris Jarvis. I work with companies on employee giving and volunteering programs.
And my name's Jake McIsaac. I spend a lot of time thinking about public safety and restorative justice.
So we are having conversations here that we've been having for 20 years.
Yeah, the only difference now is we press record and share it with you.
Thanks for joining us.
Vulnerable moment. Are you even a friend if you've never shared the Disorienting Dilemma podcast with your friends? I mean, Chris and I are talking about our inward journey all the time, and this is 2023. This is what we do now. We share pods with friends when we want them to think about things and get better and talk to each other and open up conversations. So why don't you do that? This would be a great episode to do it. We're talking about notions of free will, determinism, who we are over time, the stickiness of our belief systems, the impact that they have on our worldviews, and hear the story of why Chris is a huge Rush Limbaugh fan.
This is Dan's shirt.
Okay. Are you going to return it?
Never. We were on a trip and he was at the location, and after he had to leave early and they cleaned up his room and the shirt was left there. And it's one of those ones from Lululemon.
Oh, yeah.
$100 or something like that. I thought, oh, I found a shirt.
Enjoy your shirt. I hope he loses another one there.
Yeah. He's got great taste.
Is this because you do that thing where you do that double check at the end of?
Yeah, exactly.
It's a bit neurotic, right? Like it pays off though.
It does. Yeah. The other day we were leaving San Francisco, and so the double check is like one of us is responsible to check everything, and the other person is responsible to check everything because two of us will look at things quite differently or look in different places. And so the diversity of perspective actually has made us richer with
phone chargers,
the Bose speaker, like the stupid $170 transportable speaker that we take. It was like just tucked away, and she saw it and I didn't, just because she has a different height and looks for different. Anyways, yeah, it's been great.
Now, did this practice come about because you suffered a loss? Did you forgot something and you said, we need to actually implement this, or is it something you've always done? Because I don't remember.
No, you know what? It started out, it was kind of like, did you check the bedroom at an Airbnb? And I'll say, yeah. She's like, okay, I did too. I'm like, okay. And then at first it was like, you don't have to check the kitchen. I just did the kitchen. I'll say, yeah, but I found this bag. Oh, but yeah, it's interesting because at the beginning, there's this interaction between us, which was just sort of like not even intentional. But now it's developed into a behavior that has been very, very helpful for seeing things that I wouldn't have seen and finding things. It's great.
Well, I witnessed it. It's like this military precision now. When I was sitting there and watching the two of you double check and back across a place going, what is happening right now?
Grab this kind of
clear.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
Didn't start out that way. It was chaotic. My feelings got hurt a few times. That whole thing.
Well, it sounds like present you is better than past you, at least in that regard.
Well, wouldn't you hope in every regard? Like, I mean, so that is an
sometimes, yeah.
We know this is what we're talking about this season. And so that's interesting because I actually hadn't considered that cleaning regimen that way. But I like to think I'm doing better with something, although I have been thinking, it's harder to see certain distances and light levels. I'm becoming the thing I used to giggle at when I was younger, the person with the reading glasses or the light for the menu in the evening. But those are all physical things. So I think we're talking more about the way we kind of conduct ourselves and how we act.
Yes, but also shifting beliefs about how we view the world. I think as they evolve, or we used to, when I was a kid, this was the what came with age was wisdom. And I didn't quite understand what that. And I don't know that I love that word, but I do think
what the word
change. Yeah, the changing perspective is is interesting. I do feel like I see things differently, and I sometimes feel better for that, and then lots of times feel really ashamed about what I used to think or
Oh my
see or
gosh.
believe.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So there's this show on TV. I sent you a little TikTok
Hmm.
shot of it. Do you remember Couples Therapy? Right. It's on Showtime.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of different seasons. And yeah, I was thinking about that in terms of having a session with my past self, because they wouldn't be sitting, my past self and me sitting there on the couch with her, and she does a great job. It's a very
Yeah.
interesting show. It's kind of almost could be part of my therapy regimen, I suppose. Um, but sitting there with my past self, it wouldn't be the future self saying, "Well, Chris, what you have to understand is you're going to get here and you're going to think this and you're going to think that." My past self would go, "When did you give up? What is
Right.
your problem? You have got lost your way." It's not like my past self wasn't thinking that they were the present self at the right destination at that time. So you get two identities feeling
Yeah.
like I'm at the right destination in conflict. And I think my past self would be just very disappointed with me.
So I really like that. I was thinking about reflecting back in a more one way. Past self is just there in a state,
Just
not
an object.
responding,
Yeah.
just being
Yeah.
observed.
Uh-huh.
Like, like the Truman Show or something from
Yeah.
looking down outside the. But your version, your past self is spicy and coming for it and
Absolutely. Oh
coming
my
after.
gosh. You know who
Yeah,
my past self used to like in his mid-20s? Rush Limbaugh. I said it. I said it. And it's
we
going to
should.
say, yeah,
Dude, are you sure we don't want Connor to edit this out?
yeah. Rush bleep. Rablipa. Rablipa.
It's too late. It's in. Okay. So what? Yes.
And the modern day Rush Limbaugh is that other guy. What's his name?
Ben Shapiro.
Ben Shapiro. Yes.
Yeah.
I would say he's our
Or
modern
yeah, he's a
day.
version of that, right? Yeah, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know because I don't listen to those folks, but I do see them in various feeds or
Right.
TikTok clips or
Right.
something.
But my past self loved that, thought that was completely accurate, and from that point of view, would not have appreciated, 2023 Chris very much at all.
But what about that pulled you in at that time?
Well, same thing that would have pulled you in. So I was born into a context of Christianity, a fairly fundamental, fringy version of Christian faith, historically speaking,
Mhm.
and had a strong sense of just a few of us hold on, the earth's gonna burn, and then the real life begins after everyone dies or Jesus comes back. It's pretty plain.
There's a righteous remnant of people here holding it all together, holding back the chaos, holding the line.
Yeah, everything got sort of this moralized, supernatural
Yeah.
significance in a cosmic battle between good and bad. It's like being in a game. Like you're totally
Yeah.
immersed in this Dungeons and Dragons, God and Satan type of game, and everything has value in that game for moral or good reasons, or can devalue, and you can lose life points by doing bad things, but if you do the right things you can gain the life points back.
Right.
Yeah.
So I wonder if folks like Rush Limbaugh or these other sort of social commentators, do they fill in the gaps? Is that what they do? They fill in the sort of the gaps between religion and sacred text or whatever. Like, so I don't have to interpret it. So it doesn't take me. They want to really narrow the way that I can interpret that stuff to a particular perspective or worldview.
So that's an interesting question. So I'm going to go meta here for a sec, Jake. So I
Okay.
don't know if this is what we want to talk about at this point, but that has been one of the things when people talk about they and what is their agenda and what did they intend, that they almost has sort of a supernatural, omniscient, omnipresent quality to it.
Hmm.
I doubt Limbaugh thought anything more than ratings, paychecks, sponsors, and this is the material that gets me there. I believe that material to some extent, but in terms of having an agenda, I think you need to go to that Colorado group that definitely does have an agenda for Republican legislation. They're drafting a bunch of it
Yeah.
right now to give to people, and who to fire, who to hire. I forget, it's a Christian foundation or something like that. I can see groups like that having an agenda, but I don't. What do you think? Like, do you think? Because your question is like, when they do this, are they trying to narrow down the way we interpret the Bible so that the result gets us where they want us to be? And
Yeah.
I
I
don't know
th-
if they had that thought.
Let me shift it then.
Okay,
Maybe it's not the they, but when we occupied certain roles within religion, was that what we were trying to do?
we were trying to get people saved and see the world we saw. Yes.
Right. So not an agenda, but a mission, purpose. Is that kind of the idea?
Uh-huh. Get on board with what I know and what I do, but I don't really have much thought about how you're reading Richard Dawkins' book, for example. I
Right.
might
Right.
reference it, but I'm not kind of getting you to notice things and not see other things. Like I don't have that much
Right.
omniscience, omnipresence in your life, or even care about you that much.
Right, because you're a stat. Maybe I care about you. I care about you in the stat, and that you're going the same way, and that you're joining me on this mission.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And we're still like that. I mean, the whole podcast, this podcast is
Yeah. Well, this is the point. I'm looking back, trying to be critical, and then seeing the exact same
same thing.
patterns
Yes, yes,
in present.
yeah.
So the more we look back critically at past self, it's revealing how much is imprinted in present. Like I'm still. Wow, I don't mean to make you depressed, but
No, that's true though, right? There's the direction of my thinking that I find is more inclusive and more ethical. But the ways that I engage people, is there morality to the because if you look at behavioral science and the way human beings interact with each other, there's no morality to it at all. Zero. It is just the way we have evolved and what our biology is doing. I mean, our awareness of it is so minimal um, based on what we now know from science.
I think in those early days when we were really involved in not just religious work or service, like mission service kind of thing, reaching the poor and soup kitchens and all of that kind of language, that was also this moment of caring about people on their own journey, um,
Mm.
believing that, and I think paying attention to the conditions required for them to learn, experience. What would it take for them to reflect about where they were, where they wanted to be? Same stuff we're doing now.
Yes, yes, yes. Okay, I see the point. Yeah, I kind of I miss what
Yeah.
you were saying, and yes. So within Christianity, we had adopted a version that wasn't what we grew up with,
Yeah.
right? We were saying things like coming to the kitchen as part of this community and spending time here is as important as going to church and listening to a sermon. Maybe those two things actually should be very similar, and maybe one isn't more valuable or more sacred than the other.
Right.
And if it was, maybe it's not the one you think it would be.
And folks had a really hard time with that. And so I think
Yeah,
when we look back, we thought we were being edgy.
I think we
We
were.
thought we were right. We thought we were burning down the religious framework of this thing, or this system of Christianity, and saying, calling people to do something different, do something radical. And now I'm like, how edgy was that? We were still doing a lot of really shitty things, and people were still being hurt
Yes,
by
because
that system.
yes, yes. So we were looking at what is power in the system. How do we undo that? How do we embrace the other? Um, how do we turn everything in service? If what we believe isn't good for everyone, is it good for anyone? That kind of
Right.
thinking. That's what we were after. But you're right. I think that person, that's not my 25-year-old person. That's my 35-year-old person. That person might like who I am now, though. But they would still be afraid.
Right.
They would still be afraid because I don't interact with their faith the same way.
The 35-year-old.
The 35-year-old's faith would say, "Oh, what happened to the 55-year-old?"
Got it.
Yeah, which is really interesting. Okay, so
Oh, what did happen?
well, I think I had an experience that's helping me understand this a little bit. So this week, we've talked a little bit about the difference between terms homelessness and unhoused.
Mhm.
And we've talked about my unhoused neighbors here in Fells Point, here in Baltimore.
Mhm.
And there's a number of individuals who I see on a regular basis, and I try and learn their names. And sometimes I'm bad with names, anyways. But
Everyone's Bob.
everyone's Bob or Bill, yeah. But fortunately, most of them have pretty easy names to remember. Like I'm going to remember John and Dennis and some of the other folks, Tracy, and have a little bit of a conversation. Now, I obviously have the benefit of a few decades of experience in thinking about this, interacting, and learning from other people who know what they're doing, kind of thing.
Right.
So I'm not recommending any course of action here for anybody, but I'm walking along and I see this woman who I'd seen before but not talked to. And she said, "Do you have any change?" And I have a thing where I have to give away like $60 or $80 to unhoused neighbors on a weekly basis in various amounts. It doesn't matter to me, but I think of it not as a tax, because the tax is something you don't want to pay, but it's sort of like my contribution to my neighborhood. Like this is our neighborhood pooling our common resources, kind of thing. It's not
That's
much.
cool. Yep.
So I gave her a 20. I said, it's all I have. I try to do that not to set expectations, because humans would just connect you to the thing as
There's
a
there's the $20 guy.
There's
Love that guy.
Yes. So every once in a while, I can't offer something, or to
Mhm.
be a different amount, that kind of thing. But we weren't there yet. So she was happy, and she said, "Thank you." We were about to leave, and she says, "Do y'all pray?" And I said, "What?" She said, "Do y'all pray? Could you pray for me?"
Mm.
And now I would describe her as maybe late 40s, early 50s, fairly thin Black woman. Just had a sort of sense of being tired, right? Obviously. And so I went up to her and I put my hand not on her, but just sort of just beside her, because I know that's the approach.
That's the right.
And I kind of knew why she asked too, because I'm sure most of the good that she receives in terms of kindness comes with sort of a Christian ceremony, right?
Mhm.
Where certain ways of talking to people and references to God and prayers and kind of things are done and said. And so this moment, I knew that was going to feel comfortable because it's familiar, right? So I did the familiar thing, but I prayed an unfamiliar prayer. It went something like, I forget her name. Let's say Kelly. God, we're here with Kelly, and we want her to have a great day. So can you remind her today that every once in a while, when people look at her and smile and are kind to her, that it's you trying to help her remember how important she is to you and how much you love her. And I closed my eyes, because that's how I pray, obviously. And when I opened, she had this big grin on her face, because the prayer was it was about her, right? Like I wanted to say, you matter. So in that sense, after that moment, I thought, maybe this is the difference between being in the paradigm, when, my 25-year-old self, wrestling with the paradigm, maybe my 35-year-old self, and now being out of it and being able to use aspects of it as tools. So I'm not owned by it, but I can use it when and where I need to.
Beautiful words, I think, that you shared with her. I think that that is really cool. I wonder, would it matter in that moment, when you see the smile, if those words went anywhere? Like, I wonder if, like, cosmically, there's the doo-doo-doo, this number is no longer in service. Sorry, Chris who? After how long?
I think you find him under apostate.
Yeah. You have called the wrong. But in that moment, talk about ceremony, which I get, that makes a lot of sense. But the word that I was thinking about when I was listening to you was connection. What a really cool human connection that you had, and a shared experience that regardless of her motives for asking for that way of connecting,
Yeah.
or even her expectations about how you might pray
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
interact.
Yeah.
It seemed to have landed in a way that was deeply human. So
Yeah.
I'm thinking about how comfortable or uncomfortable I would feel in that moment. I would hope I would do something similar.
Yeah. Richard Dawkins and others like him. When you listen to these individuals, incredibly wicked smart. I wish
Mm.
I was even half as brilliant as this guy. But I don't know if he or Dawkins or others who are sort of trying to point out the dark side of religion, not just Christianity, but
Yeah,
religion as a
yeah.
concept, as a construct of how we organize ourselves. They're trying to point that out like they're trying to point out the dark side of dictatorships. Even though in certain dictatorships, you might have somebody who's brilliant and benefits everybody in your group, you should see that it caters to some of the worst aspects of who we are and how we organize ourselves as humans. So would they say, so you must disavow all of it? Or is it, can you use it as a tool where and when you need to, just because you're admitting this is an aspect of how humans organize themselves?
Yeah, I mean, this has been whenever we talk about this stuff, I always have this feeling that I don't want to alienate any listeners who aren't here, and I don't even want to say like this conversation where we are and what we're talking about is like an advanced perspective on religion, like or like a more matured, like you will get there too,
Yeah. Oh
younger
my
self. Like I
gosh.
don't want to be
Oh my
that,
gosh. No.
right?
Yeah. I hate those guys.
There are probably lots of folks who will listen and disagree with what we're saying.
Yeah.
And my hope is they don't turn it off. Like there were times when we were younger and trying to be rad where I think we would bump into people who had different perspectives about faith or religion. And you want to lean in and listen and yell at the speaker but you hang in there and try to figure out, well, how do you sense make this? What do you do with this thing that you're feeling now? This, if it's like you're really angry about something we said, maybe just go to SpeakPipe in the show notes and tell
Yeah.
us why, right?
Yeah.
Like I'd love to hear back from folks to say, yeah, I don't see it that way. Like I
That's
want to
right.
invite that kind of piece. And I think we have the platform to do it that maybe we didn't have when we were younger.
Yeah. And if I am relating to my past selves and even these past ways of being in a way that's not judgmental
Right.
or angry or full of fear, if I can get to that place, then it becomes a very interesting, open conversation on my part. Now, my 25-year-old self was in a system that
Still
demanded,
mad.
yeah, to be there and to be in the system the way he was,
Mhm.
that's a required response, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There is a binary right and wrong. You are on the wrong side of this argument.
Yeah.
Younger self would probably, because you like to argue in that way, would invite this version to be
And did.
and did, but to be converted in some way, to
Yes.
move your beliefs, to
Yeah.
hang in there. It wouldn't be to throw away. I don't think that version would be to give up on this version. It would see, okay, challenge accepted.
Yeah. Now, here's the thing. In that picture that I just painted, I want to read something to you because I want to see what you think of this. Okay, so this is from the book Behave: The Biology of Humans at Our Best and Worst. It's a New York Times bestseller, but isn't
Oh,
it?
you referenced this last week as
Did
well,
I?
or last time. Yeah, yeah. Okay, so
Oh, okay.
it's
Okay.
clearly a book that you're digging into.
Yeah, and I'm only on like chapter 3. So
Okay.
it's Robert Sapolsky. A behavior has just occurred. Why did it happen? Your first category of explanation is going to be a neurobiological one. What went on in that person's brain a second before the behavior happened? Now pull out to a slightly larger field of vision. Your next category of explanation, a little earlier in time. What sight, sound, or smell in the previous seconds to minutes triggered the nervous system to produce that behavior? On to the next explanatory category. What hormones acted hours to days earlier to change how responsive that individual was to the sensory stimuli that triggered the nervous system to produce the behavior? And by now, you've increased your field of vision to be thinking about neurobiology and the sensory world of our environment and the short term endocrinology in trying to explain what happened. And you just keep expanding. So, just one more paragraph here. What features of the environment in the prior weeks, 2 years, changed the structure and function of that person's brain and thus changed how it responded to those hormones and environmental stimuli? Then go out further, back to the childhood of the individual, their fetal environment, their genetic makeup. And then you increase the view to encompass factors larger than that one individual. How has the culture shaped the behavior of the people living in that individual's group? What ecological factors help shape the culture? Expanding until considering events umpteen millennia ago and the evolution of that behavior. So if you begin to look at one reaction based on hundreds of thousands of years and a complexity that would stagger the mind in terms of the interactions, not just mine, but my ancestors and the people currently around me to create that moment where there was stimuli and I did boop, one thing or not another. You have to ask yourself a fundamental question. How responsible can I be for a behavior?
This is a really great restorative question.
Okay.
We spend a lot of time thinking about, in terms of a restorative approach, what is that balance between individual and collective responsibility? So most of our systems are calibrated toward wanting to blame or explain something simply, when really most things without context will not fall easily into those categories. So
Okay.
I can always say, it's not my fault because, and you will, with some skill, be able to paint a very reasonable picture about, well, okay, that makes sense. This was mostly ecological or environmental or because of the systems they were in. The problem then, in terms of restorative problem, it starts to push back and diffuse individual responsibility. So if all of this is true, then I'm just a victim of my circumstances and the context. And so until everything changes, what's my motivation to act differently and be different in the world? If everything in the big system doesn't change and I'm just sort of passively going along with it, this will continue. So there's this tension, right, between restorative justice practitioners and transformative justice people in these two camps that say, no, you've got to think about the individual harms. And like restorative folks would say, individual harms and individual responsibility and owning the intention and impact of your actions. That is on you. You've got to do better. You've got to try and understand the harms. And if I can help you see another person and their experience and their impacts, you would likely structure your relationship with them differently. Not
That's
wrong, right?
restorative
That's
justice.
a restorative
And that's
worldview,
what
right?
that you're very well known for that work in Canada right now. So you know what you're talking about.
Your
You don't have
your
to
word, your
Wikipedia.
words, yeah. So yeah, so but say more. Um, transformative space would say, well, you've got to take care of the big conditions and the systems, and actually, it the only hope we have to transform this stuff is for communities and people to unite and go after it. That the systems will never course correct because it's not in their
Well,
interest.
wait,
Court
you
systems, right?
yeah, you talk about this with community policing
Right.
versus, professional policing.
Yeah, like, well, community pathways toward public safety versus a reliance on policing models.
There you
So
go. That's
why would the
argument.
system ever change? Like the system would never naturally get to, we
Right.
should defund ourselves. Like
Right.
that's just not a thing.
Right.
But defund to what? So we've talked a little bit about this in the past. What is interesting about I think, a restorative approach is that it starts to think about what's the kind of world that we want to live in. And what
Yeah.
do we believe about that place?
Mhm.
And then it gives us certain individual and sort of collective runway and pathways to start to construct the conditions required for that end state of a world. So this is a restorative approach that tries to blend, I think, both. That says actually from the principle of individual and collective responsibility, it actually can't just be one or the other.
Right. In that context, then, understanding the complexity of behaviors.
Yeah, because you asked the question about, well, is it really, did I even make any choice? And so really hammering into, is it like sort of a byproduct or did you have any other I mean, we touched on this last time about free will. We keep dancing around this.
Mhm.
Let me ask 20-year-old you.
Oh, no.
No, you don't want to do this?
Oh,
Did you
okay,
did you believe in free will?
No.
Right.
All right. So, what Jake is referring to is my stint as a hardcore Calvinist in the Jonathan Edwards version of it, which was pretty harsh.
Sinners in the hands of an angry God.
Yeah. You know
That
why
kind of,
you believe in
yeah.
free will? Because you have a series of choices that are already predestined. You'll take them and you're responsible for them. That's not fair. Doesn't matter. God writes all the rules. So, and we just exist for his own glory. So burn us, love us, doesn't, it's entirely up to him.
And the starting place is total and utter depravity.
Yes.
Right? So the starting like there is
Like,
no
just
positive
garbage. We're
garbage.
garbage, and God decides to do something with us or just burns the garbage. But it's the ultimate objectification of a human being as a plaything, of a sentient being who has so much power that they would even bother playing with little biological stunted thing. Like, it makes, when you start to step out and say, what are you talking about? It makes little to no sense.
Well, I just listened the compare and contrast because that's why, if we're talking like this at 55 and then
Mhm.
you look back and go, oh, 20-year-old
Mhm.
version didn't believe free will. It's just like, I wonder if we're just caught in these loops where we're constantly exploring some of the same notions over and over at different, it's more iterative, and it's okay to
That is,
think something at a
yeah,
particular time and place because that's the context we're living in. It
yeah,
makes sense and gives meaning to that.
yeah.
As we drift away from that, we learn other things. I do think it's okay to help to recycle back some of those because we're testing it. You're kind of always testing in a living, like a live environment.
Yeah. Yes.
Um,
Yeah. It's a sign
what
of
you
neural growth, the testing. Yeah.
to not test it would be
Yeah.
irresponsible because was it true? Was it not true? Is it,
Yeah.
otherwise you just have
It's
to
just episodic,
release it. Just
non-consequential experience.
let
Yes.
it go. Why are we hanging on to this piece of information?
Yeah.
So it's interesting to hear those
Think about it
themes
that
come
way.
back.
Okay. That is interesting what you just said about this revisiting and conversations and moving forward and maybe trying to solve the same problem, but with a different set of tools. So the first set of tools were the Christian paradigm within it. Then there was Christian paradigm beside it. Now there's outside of it, using it as a tool when and where. But I have a whole another set of tools that
Mhm.
I love learning about across the different sciences. Now I can look at what's coming back from the telescope, that where we can see so much better into the universe now. And it's showing us things that are just, if now that I can think outside of that construct, I'm open to seeing and learning a whole bunch of new things, which is fun too. But the point you made is, but they're the same topics. You keep coming back to look for resolutions. Why do we do what we do? Why do we behave? What is the problem? What is the human problem? Why do we hurt instead of help? Why do we help instead of hurt?
Yeah,
These are the only things that I think I've been thinking about in any of these different paradigms.
exactly. And maybe 80-year-old self is still thinking about it. Maybe future Chris is still considering. And maybe that's okay. Maybe that is the human journey.
It feels like fairly thematic though. Like, here's your theme for your life, and you're going to circle them the whole. Now you're going to do it from different ways and different places and different thinking models, and you'll be different over time.
Well, your conditions will be different. The test environment will be different.
Yeah, yeah,
Single version versus
it is.
married version, which is family
Yeah,
versus the times I have money and the times when I don't, and the times when I've had to make different decisions and prioritize and triage. I've got $30 left, and the times where I never have to worry about, never, but I don't have to worry about or have those same considerations.
mm-hmm,
Um, and then who am I in that moment?
mm-hmm,
And what are the things that rise to the top that really define us? What are those consistent things I think are probably through lines of our life?
mm-hmm,
So one of those things that I've tried to be, or I think, and that I get a lot of satisfaction from trying to be generous with what little I have. Not even stuff. Could be time, It could be emotional energy. But when I can invest it in a place that I think is going to make a difference. And so for me, I have some relationships where I have said this and I mean it. And I know I mean it because I am making a commitment. If there's anything that you need, if there's any way I can help,
Yep.
let me know.
Yep.
I'll jump in.
That has dragged Jake into some very weird situations.
Yes.
Not
Yes.
just with me, but with
No.
people who are selling door-to-door knives for all kinds of situations.
Well, yeah, multi-level marketing.
We'll put in the show notes some episodes you should go listen to where Jake tried to help and the crazy place he went.
But I think it comes from look, I want to try. I want to.
Right.
I want to be that person
You
in
wanna
the
make
world, and I want to be that person.
Mhm.
I probably won't ever have a lot of money that I can just fund things, but if I have a little bit of time, a little bit of energy, if I can have this posture of, "Hey, there's a guy that will jump in if he can, and if I can't, I'll just
Yep.
tell you I can't."
Yep.
But you're right; it has led me to more interesting places than I would care to imagine and remember.
Well, I think this has been good. We're going to keep thinking about this entire season, our present self, our past selves, what we have brought forward into this moment from this past selves, where I'm not that person. So why am I still playing by
Yeah.
some of their rules?
Right.
Right. And then is it the animosity with my past self that's causing it? And here's the other one. You'll see this if you watch the show Couples Share Therapy on Showtime. The need to draw people into recreating moments to rehearse the drama so that I can try and resolve it. And you will see this where certain people, you make them someone and then the situation kind of comes up and this happened to me when I was 7, but I'm going to try and fix it now that I'm 54 or however old I am right now. Right. It's a weird thing where we're trying, and it's hard to conceptualize in right now, but if you watch that show, you'll see it and you go, "Oh my gosh, am I doing that?" So things like that, that's going to be very interesting. And one of these days we'll have to tackle the very reason why we began the podcast.
Yeah, maybe we are in little micro doses.
Yeah, that's true. No, but I mean, go visit that initial issue I had.
Maybe next time.
Okay. All right.
Sounds good.
Thanks, Jake.
Okay, bye.